As I approached my 65th birthday, I found myself reflecting on the whirlwind of life, the relationships, the challenges, and the endless noise that had surrounded me for decades. It wasn't always bad, of course. Some of that noise was filled with laughter, memories, and love. But over time, I started to realize something. The constant interactions, obligations, and the pressure to please everyone were wearing me out. I wasn't living for myself anymore. I was living for others. And the weight of it all had begun to take a toll on my peace, my health, and even my happiness. It wasn't an overnight realization. Like many of us, I'd spent years saying yes to things I didn't want to do, out of a sense of duty or fear of disappointing others. Whether it was attending endless gatherings, picking up the phone for hours of conversations I didn't have the energy for, or simply trying to meet the expectations of everyone around me, I felt trapped. And let's not even start with the unsolicited advice from people who thought they knew what was best for my life. Sound familiar? One day as I sat alone in my favorite chair, a thought crossed my mind. What if I stopped trying to be everything to everyone? What if, for once, I chose myself? That question opened the door to a journey I never thought I'd take, a journey into solitude, self-discovery, and peace. Now, let me clarify something right away. Choosing solitude doesn't mean cutting yourself off from the world or becoming a hermit. It's not about rejecting people, but about prioritizing yourself and finding ways to create a life that feels lighter, calmer, and more fulfilling. And trust me, it's not only possible, it's transformative. So how did I do it? Here are a few practical steps that started me on this path and can help you too. 1. Set boundaries without guilt. And one of the hardest things I had to learn was saying no. For most of my life, I felt like no was a bad word, one that would upset people or make them think less of me. But here's the truth. Boundaries are a form of self-respect. I started small, declining invitations that didn't excite me, limiting phone calls that drained my energy, and stepping away from conversations that felt toxic or overwhelming. The first few times were uncomfortable, but over time it became easier. And the freedom it brought? Absolutely priceless. 2. Create a space just for you. Your environment plays a huge role in your peace of mind. For me, it started with carving out a little corner of my home that was entirely mine. A cozy nook with a comfortable chair, a soft blanket, and my favorite books. This became my sanctuary, a place where I could retreat whenever I needed a moment to myself. And you don't need a lot of space to do this. A quiet corner, a small garden, or even just a favorite chair can become your escape. 3. Rediscover the joy of solitude. Many people associate being alone with loneliness, but they're not the same. Solitude is intentional. It's about choosing to spend time with yourself and enjoying your own company. I started by taking short walks in the park, sitting by the window with a cup of tea, or simply listening to music that made my heart feel light. These small moments became my daily rituals, grounding me and reminding me that being alone could be a beautiful thing. 4. Focus on activities that nurture. What brings you joy? For me, it was rediscovering old hobbies like painting and gardening, activities I'd neglected for years. These became my outlets, a way to express myself and feel alive. The key is to find something that makes you lose track of time, whether it's reading, knitting, cooking, or even just watching the sunset. These moments of joy are like little gifts you give yourself every day. I didn't realize it at the time, but these small changes were the first steps toward a profound transformation in my life. As I began to let go of the noise, the expectations, and the constant pressure to be available, something incredible happened. I found peace, real, unshakable peace. Let me stop here for now to let this sink in. But remember, this is just the beginning. The journey to solitude and self-discovery doesn't end here. It only gets better. As I embraced these small but significant changes, I began noticing an unexpected shift, not just in my daily life, but in how I viewed the world around me. The quiet moments I carved out for myself started to feel sacred. I no longer felt the need to explain or justify my choices to anyone. In fact, the more I let go of external expectations, the more I realized how much energy I had been wasting trying to fit into molds that weren't designed for me. But here's the truth about stepping back from people. It's not always easy. At first, I felt a twinge of guilt and even a sense of loss. After all, we're conditioned to believe that being constantly available and connected is a measure of our worth. But I promise you that guilt fades when you start to experience the benefits of prioritizing your peace. Let me share a few more strategies that help me deepen this journey and discover the true power of solitude. 5. Reframe how you see alone. Time, instead of thinking of alone time as something you have to justify, start seeing it as a gift you give yourself. I realized that the time I spent alone wasn't about avoiding people. It was about recharging, reflecting, and reconnecting with myself. Whether it was enjoying a quiet breakfast by the window or spending an evening journaling, these moments allowed me to listen to my inner voice, a voice I'd ignored for far too long. 6. Disconnect to reconnect. This might sound cliche, but stepping away from technology was a game changer for me. I started by reducing the time I spent scrolling through social media or answering endless text messages. Instead, I focused on real-world experiences, watching the birds outside my window, tending to my plants, or just sitting quietly and soaking in the present moment. You don't realize how much mental clutter technology adds until you step back from it. 7. Surround yourself with positive energy. Now, you might wonder, if you're avoiding people, how do you handle the relationships you still value? The answer's simple. Focus on quality over quantity. I began spending time only with people who uplifted me, respected my boundaries, and brought positivity into my life. It wasn't about cutting everyone off, but about being intentional with my interactions. This shift brought me a sense of relief and made the time I did spend with loved ones feel much more meaningful. 8. Practice mindful gratitude. One of the most powerful practices I adopted was keeping a gratitude journal. Every morning I'd write down 3 things I was grateful for. Simple things like the sound of rain, a peaceful night's sleep, or the warmth of my favorite blanket. Focusing on gratitude shifted my mindset from what I was stepping away from to what I was gaining: clarity, peace, and a newfound appreciation for the simple joys of life. 9. Let go of the need for approval. This one took me a while, but it was perhaps the most liberating step. I realized that I didn't need anyone's permission to live my life the way I wanted. Whether it was choosing to skip a family gathering or deciding to spend an entire weekend reading, I stopped feeling the need to explain myself. Letting go of this need for approval gave me the freedom to make choices that truly felt right for me. As these practices became part of my daily routine, something remarkable happened. The noise of the world started to fade, and in its place I found a quiet kind of joy, a joy that didn't depend on anyone or anything external. I discovered that avoiding people wasn't about rejecting the world, but about choosing to live more intentionally and authentically. But there's more to this journey. True peace doesn't just come from avoiding people. It comes from rediscovering yourself and embracing the life you've always wanted. Let's explore that next. By the time I fully embraced this journey of solitude and intentional living, I had uncovered something profound. Peace isn't something you find outside yourself. It's something you create within. And the more I leaned into this truth, the more I realized how much of life I had been missing while trying to meet the expectations of others. So how do you take these small steps and turn them into a lifestyle that feels truly fulfilling? Let me share the final insights that help me solidify this path and ultimately transform my life. 10. Discover what truly fulfills you. One of the greatest gifts of solitude is the clarity it brings. With fewer distractions, I found myself asking questions I'd never dared to before. What makes me happy? What gives my life meaning? For me, it was the simple pleasures: walking in nature, painting landscapes, writing my thoughts in a journal. These weren't grand, life-altering discoveries, but small, everyday joys that reminded me what it meant to feel alive. Take the time to ask yourself these questions and experiment with new hobbies or revisit old passions. You might be surprised at what lights you up. 11. Learn the art of letting go. Over the years, I had held on to so many things that no longer served me: grudges, regrets, unrealistic expectations. Letting go wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I began practicing forgiveness, not for others, but for myself. I forgave myself for the mistakes I'd made, the time I'd wasted, and the opportunities I'd missed. This act of self-compassion lifted a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying. Letting go is liberating. It opens the door to new possibilities and makes room for peace to enter your life. 12. Find comfort in the present moment. If there's one thing I've learned at 65, it's that the present moment is all we truly have. The past is a memory and the future is uncertain. Instead of worrying about what could have been or what might be, I started focusing on what is. Simple practices like mindful breathing, savoring a meal, or watching the sunset became my anchors. They reminded me that there's beauty in the here and now, and that's where peace resides. 13. Redefine success on your terms. For much of my life, I measured success by external standards, career achievements, social connections, and material possessions. But as I grew older, I realized that true success is about living a life that feels meaningful to you. For me, that meant prioritizing my well-being, embracing simplicity, and cherishing the relationships that truly mattered. Take some time to define what success means for you and let go of any pressure to live by someone else's definition. 14. Embrace the power of saying yes to yourself. Avoiding people and finding peace isn't about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to what matters most. Yes to self-care, yes to rest, yes to the things that bring you joy. When you start putting yourself first, you'll find that your life becomes more aligned with your values and your happiness. As I sit here today, reflecting on this journey, I feel an immense sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the lessons I've learned, for the peace I've found, and for the courage it took to step away from the chaos and embrace a quieter, more intentional life. This journey hasn't just been about avoiding people. It's been about rediscovering myself and creating a life that feels authentic, fulfilling, and deeply peaceful. If there's one thing I want to leave you with, it's this. It's never too late to choose yourself. Whether you're 65, 75, or 85, you have the power to create a life that brings you joy and peace. Take that first step today and trust that you're worth it. Closing thought. Peace isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you create. And when you prioritize yourself, you'll find that the world feels a little less noisy, a little less heavy, and a lot more beautiful. You deserve that peace, and it's waiting for you to claim it.